All right, here is part 2 of health practices I stopped doing, or overrated health practices that I stopped doing over the years. So if you didn't get a chance, listen to episode 44. It was the one posted right before this, where I shared a bunch of different holistic health things that I started to do at the beginning of my health journey that I no longer do, that I kind of phased out over time because they were just not something that I considered healthy anymore or that were sustainable. And I thought it was an awesome episode. You guys loved it and begged for part 2, literally like thousands of requests for part 2 between YouTube and Instagram and through my clients. So here we are. I've got some good ones for you. Some you might have expected and others you might not have expected from me, but let's jump in, and I'm going to start with a fun one. So at the start of my health journey, and I think everybody goes through this, you start to find different things that other people are doing that are naturally holistic and you implement them. And for me, that was just falling in love with plants. I mean, I always loved plants and I still do. Nothing makes me happier than having flowers and plants all over my home because it really brightens my day. What started happening though was when I became more and more holistic, I started to really fill my home with all the different greenery. I had monsteras and snake plants and pothos and all the things that, you just fall in love with. You go to a greenhouse and I would just be like, every time I went, I'd pick up 2 or 3 plants. My husband loves plants too. So our house became kind of like a jungle. My office was a ton of plants. My bedroom and every room of our home, it was just green, green, green. So it was beautiful, but we stopped actually having a lot of plants. I got rid of about 99%. And now the only plants I have in my home are orchids, and I have some fresh cut flowers from the garden and maybe 1 or 2 pothos and a snake plant. Like there's really nothing left. And the reason why I cut back on the plants was specifically because of mold. Plants always will have mold in the soil. We can't get around that. Even if you are really good about watering and then letting it fully dry out before you water the plants again, naturally there's always part of the soil it's going to have mold. It's just how nature is. So we started just sticking to plants outdoors. In the summer we have our beautiful banana plants and trees and the birds of paradise and all of that on our patio where it's outside and good ventilation. But indoors, we've really stuck to things that are like fresh cut. And even fresh cut flowers will grow mold very often on the stems and the leaves if they're submerged in water. So even for that, we're not letting them sit in our home for weeks on end. Once they're a few days old and I'm like, mold is probably going to start growing, we'll compost them. So that is the first thing that I stopped doing as I became more holistic, was having a ton of plants, because in the beginning I was like all in love with this lifestyle and I was like, plants are filtering my air and this and that. And while yes, that's all true, they do have some negative effects. And for me, I had in the past severe mold toxicity. And so I do have a sensitivity to mold now. And when there is some mold around, I immediately still get the headaches and my eyes hurt and things like that. So it's something that I'm mindful of. And that was a big thing that I had to do, was just let go of all my baby plants. All right. The next one is snacking. So years and years and years ago, there was a bunch of practitioners. This was at the time I started really learning about my health. There was a lot of practitioners and bloggers and things like that promoting the idea of constantly eating to stabilize blood sugar. So they were saying, have your 3 meals plus 2 or 3 snacks a day. So you're eating like 6 times a day. This is going to keep your blood sugar from dipping too far and then spiking too high. And, at the time I was like, that sounds like a great idea, not really knowing much about how our body should actually behave and digest. And so I started doing that. And for a long time, yes, my blood sugar was stable in the sense that, I didn't have those highs and lows as much as I did before, but my gut started to really become affected. I was having way more bloating and discomfort. I was staying awake at night, like in severe insomnia, because there was always food in my gut and it was always digesting. Later on, years down the road from my initial health journey start point, I started to understand and learn more about how our bodies were created and what they're actually supposed to be doing. And that is actually eating less and less frequently. And if you are having big spikes and drops in your blood sugar, you're either not eating balanced meals, or, you have that insulin resistance or those blood sugar imbalances as a health condition from the past. And so there's things that you can do to stabilize your blood sugar, like, chromium and inositol and so many other things. But the most important thing was that I realized, and now I tell my clients the same thing, and I eat very differently, is that you don't and shouldn't be snacking. So I stopped the whole snacking thing, and now I do, my 3 normal meals a day. Once in a while, I will have like a snack, but if I have a snack, it's because I didn't have one of my meals. So it'll be a snack and I count it as a meal. But now that I've started doing that and stopped having this constant food in my stomach at all times and in my colon, my gut has been able to repair itself. My stomach is almost always, occasionally if I'm stressed out, I'm going to have the bloat or, whatever. But okay, more times than not, my stomach is very flat and I feel lean and I feel so much better. And it genuinely is because my gut actually has a chance to fully digest and eliminate, because we're not restarting the migrating motor complex from snacking. And it has a chance to starve off pathogens. So they're not always getting a fuel supply. And that is what has really helped my gut and transformed my gut, was just really minimizing the snacking, utilizing fasting more. Not in the morning. I always eat in the morning, but fasting through the evening and night. And then if I am to have a snack, say if I'm like out of the house and I didn't have a chance to have a meal, I still make sure that the snack that I'm having, I count as a meal. So I'm not going to go eat shortly after that again. I'll try to just have a sustainable snack that's going to hold me over until dinner or whenever. So that has been a game changer. And again, it's something that in the beginning, every health practitioner was promoting, like, keep that blood sugar stable by eating all these meals. And I think it's really just affecting everybody's gut so much, because humans are not supposed to be eating that much. We need to be giving our digestive system a break. So that was one thing. If you do feel like you have a blood sugar imbalance and it's hard to make it through your meals without having a snack, or it's hard to wait for the next meal without having a snack, I recommend you ensure that you're having substantial protein and a good amount of fat with a meal, because those take longer to digest than carbs. So don't go have a bowl of pasta with a little bit of chicken, because you're going to digest those carbs super quickly and then feel hungry shortly after. So instead, do like a good chicken breast or a nice steak or something like that. Have some good fats on the side with it. Have your vegetables. And then if you do need some carbs, that should be the smallest portion of what you're eating. And if you do that, that can really help to make you feel longer, because it takes longer to digest. And if you need a little bit of extra carbs for that blood sugar regulation, it should be something that's still high in fiber. It shouldn't be a pure starch carb, because then it's going to, again, digest really quickly. So I love something like lentils or quinoa or buckwheat, things like that. And if you do need to have a snack, especially if you're used to snacking, you're not going to just stop and go cold turkey. This is something you're going to have to teach your body, that way you're not getting food constantly. Once it realizes, oh, we're only having, main meals, it will adjust, but it's going to take time. So maybe cut out one snack or decrease the snack size until you can get rid of all the snacks and focus on just the bigger meals. There's a lot more tips. Maybe I'll make a whole podcast around it, but I want to get to the next one, which is I stopped eating copious amounts of seafood. So again, at the start, it's like, oh, have fish and wild caught salmon and all the seafood, which it is very healthy and there's a lot of omega-3 fats. However, our fish supply, our seafood supply, I would say regardless of where you get it at this point, even like I'm referring to wild caught. Farmed fish is just horrid, but wild caught fish and even farmed, like regardless of where your fish is coming from and which ocean, at this point, it's still very high in heavy metals. Our whole, and sadly, like our entire water supply, the oceans, the seas, they are full of metals now because of X, Y, and Z, and the fish are absorbing a lot of it. Obviously, there's some better areas than others to have fish sourced from, but in general, fish do contain heavy metals, especially the fattier fish, and it's just something that kind of comes with the territory. And at the start, when I came off of being vegan and was like kind of diving in headfirst to my health journey, I was like, oh my goodness, fish is so healthy. I should be eating way more of it. And I ate almost, like every day of the week, I was having fish or something at one of my meals. And I had testing done and my heavy metals were through the roof. So I was like, oh shoot. It took a long time to drain and detoxify from that, and I'm still working on it. So it's definitely something that I'm more mindful of now, and we will do seafood a couple times a month versus daily or weekly. A part of it is the cost is too high as well. It's so hard to feed a family of 6 with seafood and be full, especially if you want a lot of protein, but a lot of it has to do with the heavy metals as well. Another thing that I stopped doing as I became, as I continued my health journey, which has been about a good almost 10 years now, was eating a lot of raw veggies. So don't get me wrong, I'm obsessed with vegetables and I do think they are very nourishing and healthy and that everyone should be having them. And I think raw vegetables are important and they definitely have a place in our diet. But at the start, again, it was like massive salad bowls. It was all the greens juices. It was all the green smoothies. And it was just raw all the time. And in the beginning, I did feel okay because naturally just eating more vegetables, less carbs, you're going to feel better. But I did still find it hard to have ideal digestion and not feel super bloated all the time while eating a lot of raw vegetables. And so what I started doing was anything that is a lot of cellulose. So celery, kale, things that are super, super crunchy. Even like my Brussels sprouts and broccoli, like I used to do raw broccoli, Brussels sprout salads, which again are so nourishing. And if you have like a strong and healthy gut, there shouldn't be an issue digesting it. But I was doing it day in and day out, big bowls of just raw all the time. That's where it became an issue for me. So now what I do is, like I said, any crunchy, like really hard or dense vegetables will always be cooked so thoroughly that they become soft. And if I'm to have raw veggies, I stick to like peeled cucumber. I'm sticking to the soft lettuces like butter lettuce, my herbs like cilantro and mint and basil. Those can be raw, no problem, because these are a lot easier to break down. But anything that has a lot of cellulose or is high in oxalates, I'm going to cook down and make it easier to digest. And that really helps my gut a lot. So it was a big shift for me going from a ton of raw all the time because I was like, oh, you want the enzymes and all these things, which is true, but it does have its downsides. And my gut still to this day, I wouldn't call it a strong gut. I had so many gut issues in the past and my stress levels even today are so high that my gut's always and forever a work in progress. So I find that it's just a lot better for me to just minimize the raw. And even if I'm going to have my greens juices, which I do often, I always make sure I'm adding a good amount of lemon and ginger to help with the breakdown. And I don't have high amounts of raw greens at one time. So it'll be a smaller portion than what I used to do, which is like a huge jug of it. So yeah, definitely a lot of switches and shifts. And even with my clients, I'm like, if you have any gut issues, just steer clear of raw fully and like cook your dandelion greens and cook your kale and cook all the things and have like a nice big bowl of cooked veggies. It's going to be a lot easier on the gut. And another thing that I stopped doing was detoxing around the clock. So this is actually a recent thing that I stopped doing. I would say like about 2 years now I've stopped. And in the beginning, when I had so much toxicity, severe health issues, I had to detox for a long period of time. And that was the only way I was able to get better. But what I was so scared of was stopping the detox because I thought everything was going to come back. I thought my topical steroid withdrawal and my mold toxicity and my IBS and PCOS and thyroid issues and eczema and psoriasis and every other problem that I had was going to return. So I just kept detoxing. Every single day I was on the detox teas, taking, detox supplements and like dandelion tinctures, and I was just nonstop with the detox stuff. And what ended up happening was I had testing done just to check my lab work, and my liver enzymes were elevated. And I looked back and I was like, I'm the healthiest I've ever been. So how are my liver enzymes elevated? And I was like, oh, maybe it's because I've been taking like high dose burdock, milk thistle, and dandelion and nonstop detoxing for like 6 years. So I was like, my body definitely needs a break. And that's where I decided I'm going to stop and just do seasonal cleansing, mainly with homeopathics because they're so gentle. And I stopped, and literally within a few, I would say like 4 weeks, not even, my enzymes were back to normal and everything was great. So it was obviously the supplements that were just pushing the liver and kidneys too hard, specifically the herbal. So I stopped doing like the detox herbal teas and things. And now what I do for quote unquote gentle detox, which I don't consider a detox, but more just loving my body, is like my cardamom cinnamon tea. This helps with like blood sugar stabilization and hormones. I'll do like my holy basil and rosemary, which does give the liver support to detox, but it's more for hormones and antioxidants and nourishment. And then I'm like doing my daily probiotics, and then just eating clean, drinking lots of water. And then when it comes to detox, it's more of a seasonal thing where I'll be like 2-3 times a year, we're going to go through like a month cleanse, and it's gentle and it's with homeopathic. So again, there's like no strain on the liver with those. And what I end up doing is, that's maintaining my health. I did have to do a big amount of detoxing up front, or I would not have gotten away from all of the health issues. But it was that fear of letting go of the detox once I felt better. And I was like, if I ever stop, everything's going to come back, which is not true, but I had to break through that fear. And once I did, and I realized like, hey, I fixed my body. It's doing great. It can take care of itself. I don't need to just always obsess. It really helped. And yeah, after my liver enzymes came down, I actually felt so much better, and it was so much less money I was spending and time and energy. So that was something I stopped doing, detoxing around the clock. The very last thing I can share is that I used to always have every food group at every meal. You would hear again a lot of bloggers. Like I didn't have any education when I didn't have any holistic knowledge when I started my health journey about 10 years ago. So for me, I was just taking what everyone else was saying and running with it because I didn't know. And I was like, well, if they're sharing it, it must be right. So almost every, again, blogger, practitioner online that I was coming across was saying that at every meal, you should have your fats, your carbs, your protein, and that's how it should be. For me, that doesn't always work. I will tell my clients, like I give them a visual, and I'm like, when you want to eat your food, like roughly, if you're going to have a bit of everything, you want half your plate to be veggies, a quarter to be protein, and the final remaining quarter to be a mix of fat and carbs. So it could look like a big pile of steamed green beans and asparagus, or sauteed zucchini, and then some chicken or, lamb or something. And then some lentils cooked with, some olive oil or whatever. But it doesn't mean that you need to eat all of these foods or food groups, fats, carbs, and proteins in every meal. For me, I thought that I had to, or my blood sugar and digestion would be so off. So I was doing that for so long. Again, it caused gut issues for me. It caused sluggish digestion. The thing that works best for me, and the way I personally feel best consuming and eating, is having protein with veggies and fat and without the carbs. Or I have the carbs on their own with some fat without the protein and the veg. So kind of like a form of food combining. I don't do this at every meal, but I stopped having that belief that every single meal needs to contain every single one of the food groups. And by moving away from that, my digestion has gotten so much better. This might be TMI, but I used to see so much undigested food in my stool. I used to have a lot of heartburn and things like that. And it was just a strain that was on my stomach trying to consume all of the food groups in one meal. And when I moved away from that, and I was like, it's okay to just have a bunch of meat and veggies, or it's okay to have, some carbs like hummus with carrots and cucumber. And there's not much like actual animal protein in that. I just digest it so much better that way. So that's what I do. I moved away from the, being in a box of eating and to what works best for my body. And it's been working really well for me. So those are some of the things that I stopped doing. And I think now in 2024, there is so much information out there on what you should do, the best diet to follow, the best foods to eat, what you should never eat. And it can become so overwhelming, because I personally don't think there is a one way. You hear people talk about the carnivore diet, which has so many health benefits, like eating, high amounts of high quality fatty meats and things. Of course, you're going to have a great gut health. You're going to have great skin. There's a lot of benefits, but then I do think there's downsides. And then you look at eating something like paleo or vegan or whatever. There's so many options out there, and there's always benefits to every type of diet, but then there's also negatives. And so I think the most important thing is looking at yourself as an individual with unique needs, requirements, and so on and so forth, and then finding the diet and the way of eating that fits best for you. For me, it's more of a Mediterranean diet with a big focus on the protein. I don't eat like 170 grams of protein in each day. Like some days I'll be at 50 grams of protein. Other days I'll be at 90, and it really does vary. I don't obsess with the amount as long as I feel full and satiated. But what I do focus on is restricting my carbs to not be too much, just because I get tired and I don't feel good because I do have insulin resistance. I don't feel good on carbs. So I will just focus more on protein, which I feel amazing, and vegetables that are cooked and some healthy fats. And I thrive with that. So that's what works for me. And so that's what I do personally. Everyone's so unique. So I think just follow what works best for you. In the beginning, I had to follow someone's guidance because I had no clue what I was doing. So I was like, oh, if I have to have 6 meals a day, or this, like the snacking and the 3 meals, I'm going to do that. If you're telling me that I have to have protein, carbs, and fat with every meal, I'm doing that for a balanced diet. In the beginning, any change I made helped because I was eating pretty much just carbs all day, every day. So any change I made was going to help. But as I started to heal and it got better and better, and started to realize like certain things aren't working for me and I'm not feeling good anymore, that's where I really had to reassess my diet and say, wait, what do I feel good eating and what do I not feel good doing? And with that information, I also have to, do my own research and look into, how do people eat in the past? What is our gut actually doing all the time? What is helping our gut? What's destroying it? And we know snacking stops the migrating motor complex every time you eat. So that can't be ideal. And just with all that information through research and through what I know my body likes best, I've kind of come up with my own diet plan for myself. And that's what I follow and stick to, 95% of the time. And it works well. So that's what you guys need to do as well. But I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I could still make tons more lists of things that I stopped doing. I think it can be, the holistic space is really nice in one sense because you can feel like, encouraged and supported on your health journey. But then in another way, it can also feel isolating when you see one person saying, you're crazy and you're going to get fat if you don't do carnivore. And then the next person saying, oh, if you're not, vegan, you're super unhealthy and so inconsiderate. And then the next person saying something else. And then you're kind of like, wait, what am I doing? What should I do? It can be overwhelming. So I just thought I'd share my thoughts and my perspective, as it's such a unique journey for everyone. And you might think I'm crazy, not snacking, and you might think I'm crazy with the ways that I eat and the things that I do. And that's totally fine because we're all so different, and what works for me might not work for you. So that's why I wanted to share. I love how I've been evolving over this past almost decade of being healthy. I still have a long way to go, a lot to learn, and still so much to figure out about my body. And I don't even know if everything that I'm doing is exactly what my body needs. So I'm just taking it day by day. And I have a feeling in a few months from now, there's going to be more holistic practices that I stop doing or that I start implementing. So we'll see where it goes. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And if you want part 3, let me know through my social. Hope you have a beautiful day or night wherever you're listening from. And I'll talk to you in the next episode. Bye.